der lange Weg. 2 Flaschen Whisky für die Zeit. Und ich date gern habe, du bist dabei. Maria geht, fahrt mal weg, ist weit. Wann ich geh, ich werd dir fehlen, wann ich geh. Du sehst nicht, was ich mach, du sehst nicht, wie ich lach. Ich werd dir fehlen, du watsch sehen. Hab kriegt mein Zettel für den langen Weg. Du schönste, als mir finden kann. Es hat Maria und Dale ganz wunderbar. Hass ich dir den weißen Dank. Wann ich geh, ich werd dir fehlen, wann ich geh. Du sehst nicht, was ich mach, du sehst nicht, wie ich lach. Ich werd dir fehlen, du watsch sehen. Well, hallo, lieber Leid, gute Abend für all die Leute in America, die dabei sind. Good evening to everybody watching, no matter where you are. It's evening here in America. I know we got some people joining us from across the ocean over there in big old Mother Europe, and we'd like to welcome them. Please, if you're watching on the YouTube channel or if you're watching on the Facebook page, put a comment. Let me know where you're watching from. I love to know where everybody's joining us from tonight. We got one heck of a great episode coming at you. It's good to be back. It's November. It was cold, and it really felt like winter was coming around the corner this week here in Pennsylvania, the area where I live, and it's good to this party time. I know some people don't like this time of year. We've turned our clocks back, and it gets dark earlier than normal, and than what you're used to, so to speak. But for me, I like this time because it reminds us it's Mother Nature reminding us it's time to rest, because I don't think in our modern bustling society, we do not rest enough. So take that time in the next couple days, everybody, to rest a little bit. But what a great show we have coming at you tonight. We're going to be welcoming here in a little bit my good friend, our good friend, Terry Berger, to talk to you about the amazing things that he does. And we're going to have a deep dive on Thanksgiving foods among the Pennsylvania Dutch. But let me give some shouts out to some people that are joining us. We got Dr. Lingua TV saying Guten Tag. Well, he must be coming from across the ocean. We have we got Norman Jung, our good friend. He watches every month. Gute Abend aus Steinbach am Glan. He's staying up late. He knows good stuff when he sees it. Welcome, Norman. Mo is joining us again from Midlothian, Virginia. He comes by every month as well. Former student of mine, Matt Pinella from State College. He's at Penn State University. He bleeds blue and white this time of year with Penn State football. Matt, I'm glad you're joining us. It's good to hear from you. We got Vern joining us from Columbus, Ohio. They're coming from everywhere. Dr. Lingua is saying, actually, I'm from Southern Austria. So we got Southern Austria. He says, I'm also a minority. I speak Styrian, Slavic, and Slovene, but we don't say that because we are Austrians. That's an interesting conversation we could have sometime. My dear friend, Joyce Hassler. Oh, Joyce, it's so good to have you joining us from Stone Ridge. They're in Myerstown, Pennsylvania. They're in extreme western Berks County. They're towards eastern Lebanon County. She's a good friend of the family. It's good to have her joining us tonight. Dolores Moyer. Dolly says, Berks County, PA, home of treasured Thanksgiving meal memories. Good Essa. Dolly, you are right. It is Good Essa. And we're going to be talking about a lot of Good Essa tonight as the show progresses. But as I do every month, I like to start the show off by saying, hey, what's going on out there in the greater Pennsylvania Dutch community in the next coming weeks or so? And, we're moving into Christmas time and the holiday season here in the United States. And yes, I know COVID is still out there. In fact, sadly, numbers are starting to tick up in the part of Pennsylvania where I live, and maybe where you are too. We just got to be careful. I saw the numbers were through the roof in Germany this week. It's not gone. So we got to be careful out there, people. So if you want to go to any of these events that I'm going to be talking about here in a minute or two, just be safe, okay? Got to throw out to another old friend of mine. Adam Kissinger is joining us from the big city of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Well, I can't wait to see what Terry and I are cooking up either, Adam. Sometimes we don't know what's going to happen until it actually happens, right? But let me share some things with all of you, as I usually do. The first thing I want to share is, and I'm going to move this out so everyone can see it a little bit better, is, let me change this around here. No, I don't like that look. I like this look. My dear friend who I grew up with, and this is a huge shout out to Alex Salks. I went to high school with Alex. In fact, we grew up together in elementary school. He and his family own Riverview Gardens and Gifts, which is a nursery and outdoor garden center just outside of Reading, Pennsylvania, actually in Temple, PA. And they're going to do a special event on December the 4th on a Saturday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. The Belschnickel is going to be there making a live appearance at Riverview Garden and Gift. And they gave us a little sneak peek at what their Belschnickel looks like. And you're going to have the opportunity to take photos with the Belschnickel and check out all the great things that Riverview Garden and Gifts have. They are a Pennsylvania Dutch family-owned business, have been for a long time. I guess we're now moving into the third generation of this business, and they're good people. So if you're in the greater Berks County area on Saturday the 4th and you want to get your picture taken with the Belschnickel, here's your opportunity. Check out Riverview Garden and Gifts. They're on 3049 Pricetown Road. They're in Temple, and they have an event going on their Facebook page, so you can learn more about the event on their Facebook page. But go check them out, and you too can get a picture with the Belschnickel. Also coming up Sunday, December 5th, I'd like to announce that at St. Paul's Lutheran Church in Mertztown, Pennsylvania, there's going to be a presentation called Germans in Pennsylvania, 400 Years in 40 Minutes. That's a lot of history in 40 minutes, but I'm sure it's going to be a really good event. If you're interested or you're in the greater Mertztown area, stop on by Sunday, December 5th at 3 p.m. there at St. Paul's Lutheran Church. For those of you out closer to where I live in central Pennsylvania, if you are familiar with the little town of Mifflinburg, it's a sleepy little town that's really quaint. Every year they've been doing this for, well, this is the 32nd year now. They have a traditional German-style Christmas market. Christkindlmarkt. Anyone that's been to Germany or knows anything about Germany, that this time of year we're moving into the Christmas market season. They bring artisans from Germany over to their Christmas market. They close down a couple streets. It's free to go to, and it happens December 9th through the 11th. I've been quite a number of times. It's great. It's a really nice experience. So if you're looking for something to do on that weekend in December, head out to beautiful Mifflinburg, Pennsylvania. But if you don't want to drive that far, on that same weekend, historic Schaefferstown in Lebanon County is also having a Christkindlmarkt, their Christmas market where you can find artisans selling crafts and so forth. So please check that opportunity out as well. That is Friday, December 10th from 4 to 8 and Saturday, December the 11th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And you can find more information about all of that at their Facebook page and also their website. You want to learn Pennsylvania Dutch? You have some opportunities coming up. I came across both of these opportunities here online not too long ago. If you are in the area of New Tripoli, Pennsylvania, there will be a Pennsylvania Dutch language course that is running from January 13th. It starts on the 13th from 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m., and that'll run every Thursday until early April. It is free to do. You can give a donation towards the fire company who is hosting the event. The class will be taught by Don Billig, and there is his email address and his telephone number if you would like to get more information. They will be using information and texts from the textbook that I wrote with my good friend Dr. Josh Brown, Schwetzmal Deutsch. So it's an introductory course on Pennsylvania Dutch. Please feel free, if you're in that greater New Tripoli area and you want to learn Pennsylvania Dutch, here's a great opportunity. And it doesn't matter where you live in the world. There's also going to be another opportunity to learn Pennsylvania Dutch by our good friend, Luella Sibo. She will be teaching Easy Deutsch. There's a section 1 and a section 2. These are going to be completely online through Lehigh Carbon Community College. The information is there on the slide. The section of Deutsch 1 will run from January 27th through March 24th, 2022, from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. I think it's one night a week or maybe 2 nights a week. You can get more information if you look them up online. And then there'll be a level 2 course following it, running from the 21st of April through the 16th of June. So it doesn't matter where you live and you want to learn Pennsylvania Dutch, here's an opportunity to learn it online as well. I announced this last month, but I want to announce it again. Mark your calendars. January 30th is the third annual Groundhog Day for the Youth that's being run by the Pennsylvania German Sommerlauf people. It'll be at the Midway Diner in Bethel, Pennsylvania. And then the big event, Saturday, March 19th, is the Pennsylvania German Sommerlauf, a day full of Pennsylvania Dutch fun, history, language, genealogy, music. It's an opportunity for your family to come learn about Pennsylvania Dutch or reconnect with your Pennsylvania Dutch roots. Do it, do it, do it. It's a great opportunity if you're in the greater Bethel area, which I know not everybody's in the greater Bethel area, but in case you are, there's an opportunity for you. I got some more people we can give some shout outs to. There she is. There she is, our good friend Carol Diefenbach-Kanner, joining us from the lovely town of Burnville, Pennsylvania. Thanks so much, Carol, for tuning in. Our good friend Rachel Yoder is joining us as well. Oh, such a good friend of ours, actually distant relative of mine as well, as is Carol. Us Pennsylvania Dutch, our roots run all over the place over here in Pennsylvania, but she's saying, hey, hello, Doug and Terry. Good to have you joining us, Rachel, from Boyertown, Pennsylvania. There it is, Boyertown, giving the shout out. I've schwätzt at you people enough, but keep the comments coming and we'll share with them with the audience as we watch. But it's time for me to bring in my good friend. There he is, the one and only Terry Berger. Terry, welcome to PA Dutch Live. It's so good to have you here.
Ja, guten Abend. Es macht mich froh, zum hier sein.
Ich bin auch froh, als du dabei bist, Bube. And for those of you that can't speak Pennsylvania Dutch, we pretty much just said, it is good to see you tonight. It's happy to be here. Terry, tell everybody where you live. Let's start with that.
Well, I live in Carbon County, Pennsylvania, west of Lehighton, east of South Tamaqua. I have a small farm up here, and originally from Northampton County, Pennsylvania. Nazareth is my hometown.
Yeah. I think a lot of times people always just think about, when they think about Pennsylvania Dutch country, they think of the big ones like Berks County, Lebanon, Lancaster, Lehigh. And I think all too often we forget about the counties that are just over those borders that had huge populations of Pennsylvania Dutch, like Carbon County and Northampton County. And it's so important. It's so important for us to remember that it's not just Berks and Lehigh and Lancaster and Lebanon. There are so many, the Pennsylvania Dutch diaspora spreads out beyond just those four. And you're a great example, and your family is that, up above Lehigh County, we, moving up towards the Pocono region, we had large percentage of Pennsylvania Dutch people up in that region.
Monroe County also.
Exactly.
I had, my dad's side of the family is from Kunkeltown in Monroe County. And I had aunts in Broadheadsville that spoke Pennsylvania Dutch just as well as anybody else.
Well, can I ask you this? When you were a kid, Terry, how much did you hear the language growing up?
It depended on which side of the family we were around. Dad's side of the family, that was all they would speak. Mom's side of the family, it was hit and miss.
As a kid, did you fall into the story like so many people did, where, well, they only spoke Pennsylvania Dutch when they didn't want me to know what was going on? Was that your childhood, or was it more like, here's our language, if you want to learn it, learn it, if not, okay? Like what was that like for you?
Well, my experience is a little different than some. My pops wore a blue streak in English and Dutch, and so I would start repeating things and get my mouth slapped. Well, it came to the point it was either my dad stopped swearing or they teach me the language. Well, you know which one won out. So by the time I was 5 and got to kindergarten, I knew everything in both languages. I knew the alphabet. I knew how to count. I could tell time. I could make change. I knew my colors, all the basic things that you would know, to when you start kindergarten. I knew in both languages. Mom used to do once or twice a week. Mom would do what she called Deutschschule, which we had a blackboard in the kitchen, and the alphabet and numbers were around the outside. So we'd go through the alphabet and numbers each time, and then she would write different things and teach me.
Did you ever it's your experience is so different from so many people from your generation where
Oh yeah.
the language wasn't nurtured like that with so many people that grew up in the same time period in Pennsylvania that you did. Why do you think your parents took
Even
the
my sisters.
why do you think that they decided that it was important for your parents to not be like a lot of the other parents of their generation and truly pass this language on? Did you ever ask your parents that, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the older I got, the more I took an interest in it, and the more I wanted to learn also. And it wasn't, now my sisters are both older than me. They're, my oldest sister's 73, the younger is 70. And neither of them speak it or really understand
Mm.
much of it. Where for me, ik weet genoeg te laten kom ik net verkopen. I know enough that you can't get one over on me. Um,
It's funny.
so
I'm glad that they did. There's so many
oh,
parents of that time period that just didn't take the time, or maybe just didn't feel it was important to pass on. I don't know. It's tough.
I'm very thankful. I'm very thankful, and I think when you have an immersion in two languages, your thinking is different, your experience of life is much different. I had some ups and downs with it. In first grade, I had a teacher that was from Philadelphia. She didn't like us with thick accents. And there were times when I didn't pronounce English words right that she would make me stand with my nose in the middle of a circle on the blackboard on my tiptoes. Now, granted, this it would be considered child abuse now, but she got away with it.
Right. Right.
But when mom and dad found out what she was doing, they actually changed my first grade class. So I had class with Mrs. Klein, who at least was Pennsylvania Dutch and kind of understood things.
Yeah. Yeah, we could have a whole show on how some kids in Pennsylvania Dutch country were treated by teachers because of what they spoke or how they spoke.
Oh
It,
yeah,
it it's unbelievable, unbelievable
oh yeah,
stories. But
yeah.
I'm very glad that you had that nurturing experience and that you learned the language, because that's kind of how we've come together and got to meet each other. As through Pennsylvania Dutch is what brought us together. So let's talk about some of the things that we really wanted to, that I wanted to bring you on for. One thing that is
Sure.
also, I don't know if unique is the right word or not, but one thing that is different about Terry's background and my background, we're both Pennsylvania Dutch, but as some of you that watch the show and are familiar with my YouTube work, and is that I was raised Lutheran. A lot of Pennsylvania Dutch that weren't sectarian, Amish and Mennonite, were raised either Lutheran or Reformed, what would eventually become, the United
Mhm.
Church of Christ. But Terry excuse me, Moravian, and that's another group. We talked earlier about these counties and this region of Pennsylvania that we often kind of overlook as being part of Pennsylvania Dutch. But the Moravian faith, even though they're not Pennsylvania Dutch, they didn't come from the same region of Germany that the original Pennsylvania Dutch came from. I mean, the Moravians are part of our story too, because they settled among us. So I'd like to talk a
Yes.
little bit about the Moravians, because there are a lot of Americans, especially people that live outside of Pennsylvania, that maybe have even no idea what Moravian is or what it means to be a Moravian. Could you give
Right.
like the
Yeah.
elevator pitch on what is a Moravian? We'll start with that.
Well, I would say a Moravian is a Christian, like most denominations. The focal point of the Moravian Church, what we consider to be the essential of the faith, is a relationship with our Creator through Jesus Christ. Um, so as Moravians, we have a motto that we live by, and it's in essentials unity, in non-essentials liberty, and in all things love. So the essential of the faith is that relationship in Jesus Christ. Non-essentials of the faith are things like worship spaces, like hymns, even scripture. Scripture is viewed not so much as a non-essential that it's not important, but it doesn't supersede that relationship aspect of the faith. Scripture is meant to guide and illuminate and teach us about the faith, but it is not the faith. So that that I think makes us different than a lot of other groups. One other thing that does separate us from most modern Christendom is we are an old Protestant denomination. We predate Martin Luther by a good 105 years, I believe. So we are descendants of a reform movement that started in Czechoslovakia, and eventually, the Catholic Church didn't like us. No skin there, but um, they did try and stamp us out, and the church really went underground. There was a diaspora. Part of the church went into Germany, was exiled into Germany. The other part of the church was exiled further east in through um, Poland and eventually into the Ukraine. So my experience, my Moravian experience, is of the Germanic Moravian Church as we exist here in Pennsylvania.
Because
Up
eventually
go ahead.
Moravians came with the invitation of William Penn and all these opportunities for religious freedom. Moravians came to Pennsylvania because it was an opportunity for them to practice their faith. And
Well, we actually came to Georgia first,
oh, really?
and
Okay.
yeah, we settled in Savannah, Georgia, in the early 1730s. And what brought us to Pennsylvania is again a little bit different, although
Okay.
we are connected with William Penn. Um, but around the time of the mid 1730s, there were problems with the Spanish over in Florida, and Georgia started raising a militia. Now, being a peace church, we would not participate in the militia, and so we were asked to leave Georgia.
Hmm.
And at that time, a missionary named George Whitfield was down in Georgia, heard of what was happening with us for one thing, knew of us from Germany, knew about our craftsmanship and our skill sets and things, and actually asked the church leaders to come to Pennsylvania. He wanted to establish a school for Indians and free slaves. So Nazareth, the town that I grew up in, there's a large structure called the Whitfield House, which was that building that we built, and that was a school for. I mean, at that time there were natives walking around the streets, in the area. So we came, and then through William Penn and George Whitfield, we were given tracts of land in the Lehigh Valley. By 1740, Nazareth was established. By 1741, Bethlehem was established. We had Moravians settling in those areas prior to that, but the official establishment dates are those years. But up at that time, we were a communal people also. So we were communal, like the Hutterites are still today. Now we left the communal way of life around the 1860s, depending. I think our last commune in Wisconsin was 1860, 1865, somewhere in
It's
there.
fascinating. So
So
real quick, I just have a couple quick questions for you, like on the fly.
sure.
Moravians, do they do infant baptism?
We at one point in our history we were believers baptism only, and that was
Okay.
that was early on. That was early on. That was well, by 1457 we were an established group in Czechoslovakia. So anywhere between there and the mid 1500s, we were solely believers, like adult baptism.
Mm-hmm.
That has evolved over the years. So at this point, it really is up to the families.
Oh,
So
okay.
if a family wants to have their children own the faith, so to speak, and do more of an adult or believer's baptism, that's allowed.
Okay.
Generally, we do have infant christenings and baptisms.
Well, could you share your screen, Terry? We want to share some photos that you have about something that's also unique to the Moravian faith, or maybe not unique, but how the Moravians handle this. I'm going to bring your laptop screen in here. If you could minimize that then, Terry, and pull up those photos that you and I were talking about earlier. While Terry's doing that, I wanted to throw a couple some stuff that viewers are sharing. Rachel says there was a lot of shame for people after years of being mistreated for speaking Pennsylvania Dutch. So sad. Parents didn't want their kids to be considered dumb Dutch. And as she said, that is really, really sad when we think about that part of our history. But it was a very, it was a very active part of our history for so many times.
Oh,
Yeah.
very much so.
Yeah. Right. We also have Ethan joining us from Canada. Gouda Obit aus Canada. Well, that's nice to join us, Ethan.
Oh,
Terry,
what
can
part
you?
of Canada, Ethan?
Yeah, Ethan, let us know what part of Canada you're in. Could you minimize your screen there, Terry, and
Yeah.
so that we can see your pictures? There. Hope everybody can see that. I have it sharing the best that I can. Maybe we'll put Terry down here in the bottom and we'll see how that looks if people can see it. So what are we looking at here, Terry?
You are looking at a current version of the Moravian Helba, or prayer covering. Just our word for prayer covering is unique to us. In a lot of traditions, it's called a bait cop or just a cop. The word Helba is a Moravian term. What you're looking at is the current style that we use. Up until the 1860s, again, we were a very traditional looking plain group. You really couldn't distinguish us from other plain groups, except for some of the types of clothing that we wore. The women's prayer cap or halba came to a bird's beak in the front, and that did distinguish it from the Amish and Mennonites and other brethren groups also.
Okay.
If you notice the white ribbon on this halba, this is a halba I made for a widowed sister in my congregation. In the Moravian tradition, women's age groups are shown or reflected by different colors that are worn on the halba, and at one time also the strings or ties that were used to tie garments together up the front, like a corset that had a lacing up the front.
Okay.
So this is a widowed for a widow. This is for a mother and daughter that I made. Blue is for a married woman, and the bright red is for a little girl 5 and under.
So these are worn only during a church service, or do they wear them for other instances?
They're worn during church services, festival days, communion services.
Okay.
And that goes by congregation. Some congregations don't wear them at all. My congregation, it's kind of 50-50, depending on the festival day. And
Okay.
that festival day would be like a love feast.
Okay. Which we're going to talk about here in a little bit.
Yep. Now, for a girl who is 6 years old to 15 or 16, it is a lighter shade of red. For an older girl, unmarried, was a cranberry red. And then there was a pink. Pink is also in there somewhere. And then for, like I said, for a widowed woman, it's white.
Okay. So that's definitely unique to the Moravian faith. That's really neat stuff. But we need to transition because I promised people we'd talk about Thanksgiving stuff and food, which actually I think is your next picture of your stove, Terry.
It is.
All right. Could you go to one of the pictures that has the whole stove? While Terry, right there, one of those, perfect. So one of the things that some of you might know Terry from is Terry every year volunteers at the Kutztown Folk Festival, which we've talked a lot about on this show. And he demonstrates traditional cooking methods of the Pennsylvania Dutch on wood-fired stoves, just like our great-great-grandparents did their whole lives, before electricity and before gas stoves. And this is a picture from inside of Terry's house where he has a wood-burning stove. Do you want to tell us just real quickly a little bit about the stove?
This is in my summer kitchen. It is a Heartland wood-burning stove. Unfortunately, the Heartland company discontinued the wood-burning line about 4 years ago. Up to that point, they were still making them in this style. This is the smaller of the stoves that they manufactured. They did manufacture one that was about a third bigger than this also.
Let me ask you this question. With all of the modernity that we have in this world today, why do you choose to cook like this? Because it's a labor intensive act. Why do you do it?
Um, it's genetic.
Okay, okay.
There's something about it that I really enjoy to begin with. At one point in my younger days, I lived off the grid for almost 6 years.
Okay.
So I had a wood burning stove, wood burning kitchen range for the winter months, fall and winter months. I had it, and it was almost like an old order house. I had a propane fired freezer, refrigerator, um, water heater. The water in the house was gravity flow, so I didn't have any pumping or anything, but I did have running water and things. Drove my mom and dad up the wall, but I loved it. I've been cooking on a wood stove a good 40 years.
I'll bet you if you threw it out there to teach people how to cook on wood stoves, there would probably be people that would sign up to learn the tricks of the trade for sure. Are there any
Well,
other pictures you wanted to share with us, Terry, tonight? A little bit
sure,
before we talk
sure.
about foods?
Let me tell you a couple other things about the stove, real quick. Some
Sure.
people think that it is really a hard thing to learn. To me, it's actually easier than using an electric stove. One of the differences, you don't turn the burner up or down. You notice here that on the left hand side, this is where the firebox is. So the left hand side is really the hottest point of the stove. And then when you get over to the right, it's dropped several hundred degrees in temperature. So you have all of your working temperatures on one surface. You have high, medium, and low. And instead of turning a burner up or down, you just move the pot to a different side of the stove depending on what you're doing with it.
Hmm. It's that
Which,
simple, right, Terry?
which I find that to be much simpler than having to fiddle around with buttons and dials.
Sure,
But
sure, sure,
you know,
sure.
that's my pragmatic nature.
Ooh, there
This
she
is
is. Ooh, baby, look at that.
Yep, that is last Thanksgiving's turkey.
Mm.
And let's see, there you can see it really is a wood burner. Oh, we're back to the halbas again.
Perfect, perfect. Well, I'm gonna pull the pictures out a minute. Pull your stream out, Terry. I've seen
Sure.
you cook at the Kutztown Folk Festival. If you guys come this summer, Terry will be cooking. They do twice a day, right? Lunch and dinner. You'll do meals typically.
That's changed a little bit. We're only doing one
Oh,
meal,
okay,
but we've extended it to seating of 12,
okay.
and it is
And
open to the public now too. At
when
least it was when we did it last. I'm not sure what's going to happen,
right.
with the whole
When we
COVID
get
thing.
right when we get closer to the folk festival, I'll definitely let everybody on the show know, hey, if you want to have dinner by Terry, this is what you need to do in order to make that happen. It is worth whatever it takes to get you on that list. Trust me, I've had his cooking. It is as traditional Pennsylvania Dutch as you're going to get, made in the traditional way. So definitely we'll keep everybody up to date. Ethan responded, Terry, he's from Kingston, Ontario, but get this, he's originally
Oh,
from Moulton, my good old Moulton,
oh,
right outside of Reading, Pennsylvania. How about that?
okay.
And Karin is joining us from the Pals from Germany as well. There were a couple other comments I wanted to show that people had asked. Chris, our good friend Chris Wartzenloof, I've known him for quite a while now. He says, is there truth to the speaking of Dutch, aka German, post-World War II, in the elimination of the language because of the concern of being quote-unquote Germans? Chris, absolutely. In fact, it started even before that with World War One.
World War I,
Both
yeah.
world wars really put pressure on the Pennsylvania Dutch. Of course, it wasn't very fashionable to be speaking a Germanic language when we were fighting Germans as our enemies. And that's really during, from World War I on is when we start to see pressure put on the Pennsylvania Dutch to maybe not use the language as much. But there were, as many of you know, the Pennsylvania Dutch are what we call Stabkeppig. We're stubborn. And my family, Terry's family, we kept speaking it anyway.
Yeah.
But the World Wars definitely did put pressure on the culture and on the language for sure. So let's talk about thanks. Oh, go ahead, Terry. I'm sorry. It sounds like
Let
you want
me
to say something.
just to chime in with that, an interesting note. Up until the eve of World War II, the hymnals in Central Moravian Church in Bethlehem were still German.
Yeah.
So that would
And
have
that's
been early 1940s or late
yeah.
1930s.
It's the case in a lot of the rural Lutheran and Reformed church congregations as well throughout, Pennsylvania Dutch country, that hymnals and certain services were still being done in German
Yeah.
up, into that time period. Yeah, you can, you know, but the World Wars, and then after World War II, of course, then we got the pressures of America changing as well, but that's a topic for another night. Because
Right.
let's talk a little bit about Thanksgiving. Terry,
Sure.
take us on a magical trip to your kitchen next Thursday. What will we find on your table?
Well, here we are. Oh,
Did you want
what
me to
happened?
put? You have a picture to show, Terry? I'll put you back in the stream if
No,
you want.
sorry, I
Oh,
don't have a
okay,
picture. I don't have
okay,
a picture of the table. I will say at this point, my Thanksgiving table is pretty traditional. There's going to be turkey.
okay.
There are green beans. Now the green beans were in the garden a couple weeks ago, so they're homegrown green beans. Sweet potatoes, filling, but it is
Oh,
it
real
is
quick.
my mom's filling recipe.
Okay, now for people that aren't traditionally Pennsylvania Dutch, and this is a comment I get a lot, but most of the audience probably knows what we're talking about. But describe what Pennsylvania Dutch filling is.
Well, now sometimes normally mom made bread filling,
Okay.
so it's dried bread, eggs, um, seasonings, celery, onions, um, and mixed into like a firm bread pudding.
Okay.
Okay,
Did you grow up with potato filling?
I've had it. Now mom's version. See, mom had some takeoffs on the traditional stuff sometimes.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
Potato filling for my mom was sliced potatoes mixed in with the bread filling.
Oh, really? Okay. That's
Yeah,
different.
yeah. Almost.
Okay.
She would slice the potatoes almost like she was making them for fried potatoes, but then she would mix that in with the bread filling and bake it that
Okay. Yeah, that's different. So I grew up, we'll talk about my family's table, would have Pennsylvania Dutch potato filling, which essentially is mashed potatoes. You would mash potatoes,
way.
and then into the mashed potatoes, I'll put sauteed celery and onions,
Hmm.
um, tons of butter,
Oh yeah.
and then bread cubes,
Hmm.
parsley, salt, pepper, um, and then that all gets mixed together, and then you can serve it fresh just like that. That's usually what I do, but I know people that'll then take that and flash bake it so the top
Hmm.
gets kind of a little bit crispy, and then you eat it
Hmm.
like a potato dish. I mean, I douse mine with good gravy that we've made from the turkey drippings, of course. But Pennsylvania Dutch potato filling in that style of dish that I just explained is very traditional in our culture. I don't know
Yes.
of anybody else that outside of the Pennsylvania Dutch community that makes anything like it. And I often,
Right.
if I have friends coming for dinner that are not Pennsylvania Dutch or not familiar with the culture, I like to make that dish as a side dish. It's an easy one to like introduce people to, because who doesn't like mashed potatoes?
Right.
And you're adding this good stuff to it. So I always like to use that as kind of like a gateway drug into Pennsylvania Dutch food because it's easy. And if they don't like it, they can just put more gravy on it. And then that just makes it better anyway.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, we'll also have lettuce with bacon dressing.
Okay.
So that's how Dutch should
Adam
fill.
has a good quote. We're not going to fight. We're not going to start any arguments over how Deitch is our potato filling, but we'll
Oh
just say
yeah, no.
it's pretty darn Deitch.
Oh yeah, well yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Um,
lettuce and hot bacon dressing. Okay, what else is on your table?
Homemade bread.
Okay,
Always some either semmel, some type of semmel, a roll.
rolls like roll. Uh huh.
Yeah, and now that mom had a traditional semmel that she would make.
Okay.
Um, there were
Would
Sometimes
you
there's
have
chow chow.
okay, so you have a
But
sour of some kind. Would
mhm,
cranberry sauce be typical on your family's table?
cranberry sauce, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Sweet potatoes. Now, some parts of my dad's family uh, actually instead of turkey, they made pig stomach, made
For
stuffed stomach
Thanksgiving.
for
Yeah.
Thanksgiving. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Um, so that's a whole nother show too.
Terry, the one
Then
thing
for
you didn't mention, and what's always on the Maidenford table at Thanksgiving. Can everybody see that? Dried sweet corn. Now, for those of you outside of Pennsylvania Dutch country, you might not recognize what this is or what it is, but
mhm,
it's sweet corn that's been dried, so it's really hard, crunchy kernels. Terry,
right.
did you grow up eating sweet corn, dried corn?
Oh, I grew up eating it. I grew up making it.
And
In fact, I also
how do you
go ahead.
make yours? What's typical for your dried corn recipe? And we'll see if mine's the same or not.
Pretty much, I kind of cook it like rice. So it's half dried corn, half water.
Hmm.
You simmer it until the corn is soft. Salt, pepper, butter, and maybe just a sprinkling of sugar.
Okay.
And
White
that's
sugar or brown sugar?
white sugar.
Okay, so the version I grew up with, very similar to what Terry's saying. You cook that, you cook the corn till it kind of reconstitutes and gets soft again, and then to that my family will add milk, butter, brown sugar, salt, and pepper. And I can't give
Okay.
you measurements because it's always done to taste.
It's done
Um,
to taste. Yeah.
sometimes yeah, it's like is the because one thing that I dearly treasure as a memory as a child is that the dried corn, the turkey would be out of the oven by this point, kind of coming down in temperature a little bit so that you don't burn your mouth eating it and that it's resting. And then then the stovetop would be filled with the filling being cooked, the potatoes being cooked, and dried corn. And my grandmother would be making the dried corn, and she always allowed me to be, for whatever reason, she chose me to be the taste tester to let her know if it was sweet enough or it wasn't sweet enough yet, or it needed more salt or pepper. And I've been doing that
Uh-huh.
since I was a little kid.
That's
And
awesome.
the Maidenford version tends to be probably a little more sweeter than what
Hmm.
maybe some Pennsylvania Dutch families use. Those of you out there
Hmm.
watching, if you grew up with dried corn, did what was your take? Did you guys use brown sugar or sugar at all? I know some people just cook it and add a little bit of milk. I've had it that way too, salt, pepper, and butter. So that was the version that I grew up with, more of a sweet, but it has that brown sugar sweetness, which
Hmm.
has that caramelly, molassesy taste to it too. It's one of my
Hmm.
favorite things. God, if I had to have a last meal, if the day ever came where I'm in jail and they're like, "You get your last meal," dried corn would be on my plate for
Uh-huh.
sure.
Uh, I personally love it. I will make it at the Kutztown Folk Festival. Um, the crew that comes for Thanksgiving, they're not real keen on it. So I get I
Oh,
get
okay.
my stuff in with the bacon dressing and lettuce.
There you go.
You know,
We got to give a shout out
to,
to George Eckenroth here's been commenting, and he's saying milk, butter, and brown sugar. That's my boy. And I'll tell you what, George, we might be distantly related because my great grandmother was an Eckenroth. Who knows? So maybe maybe we're related, and we both like the same kind of dried corn. It runs in the
we're
family,
all
George. It
family in
runs in
some
the
respect.
family. That's you got that. You got that right. Oh, we got Chris watering over. He says, "This sounds like everything that I'd normally look at on a Thanksgiving as a menu. Now I have to wait a whole week." Yes, we do. But tomorrow's Thursday. So that's right. Just 1 week. 1 week, Chris. That's all you have to
Yeah.
wait. And we'll all be tasting all these glorious things.
Yep.
Terry, it's dessert time now. What is typical for your Thanksgiving table for dessert?
Well, dessert normally is a pumpkin pie. Now, mom, and normally I roast. I get a squash and I roast it and make it, from scratch kind of thing. I'm cheating a little bit this year using Libby's canned pumpkin. So
Okay.
okay, and this year there's gonna be a funny cake as
Oh,
chocolate funny cake. One of the relatives that comes is allergic to cinnamon, so I don't make an apple tart like I normally would.
okay.
But normally there would be apple tart. which is an open-faced apple pie.
Right. Boy, that sounds good.
In fact, if you're interested,
Terry, what time do you guys sit down for your Thanksgiving meal usually? Is it lunch or is it supper?
it's a late lunch, so it's going to be around 1 or 2,
Okay.
somewhere in there.
We'll be schlock 9 right around noon at the Maidenford household next week on Thanksgiving, which brings up something else I wanted to ask you about. Actually, Terry and I were talking about this before before we went live tonight. We were both on Facebook earlier today, and in one of these Pennsylvania Dutch groups that's on Facebook, the term and phrase, someone asked a question about the phrase schlock 9, as into what do the Pennsylvania Dutch or what do some Pennsylvania Dutch say right before a meal? You know, in English, we'd say, okay, dig in, or well, I don't know what else we might say in English, but where I grew up in
Put
my
the
part of
feedback on.
it, yeah, put the feedback on. In northern Berks County, I always heard we would say schlock nigh, which best translation, I guess, literally in Pennsylvania Dutch would be to hit it, to hit in. In English, you'd say dig in. But I was asking Terry about this, and now Terry grew up in a different part of Pennsylvania than I did. But he said, and Terry, tell everybody what your family, what you heard sometimes.
My dad's byline was grubnai.
And grabe is literally is the word to dig in Pennsylvania Dutch. So
Mm-hmm.
you know, in where Terry grew up, they were using that phrase, grapnai. Where I grew up in northern Berks County, it was schlocknai. Those of you out there watching tonight, if you know what your family said, you know, let us know in the comment sections. Adam says, "Fress up, eat up." That's good.
Yeah.
And Rachel says 2 p.m. for the Yoder family Thanksgiving. Boy, if I drop down to Boyertown, I might be able to make that if I don't have to wash the dishes, Rachel. If I don't have to wash the dishes. I'm cooking Thanksgiving dinner now that my grandparents have passed on. That duty is turned over to me, and I relish it. I love it. I love to cook. And Terry, I'm sure that you'll agree with me on this, but I don't think there's any greater joy in this world than feeding people, whether they're friends or family, or in some instances, people you've never met before. For me, there's few greater things in this world than the opportunity to cook for somebody. What's your take on that, Terry?
I couldn't agree with you more. And I will add to that with cooking for the folk festival. I was going to try and share another picture, and I can't pull it up.
Oh, okay.
But with cooking for the folk festival, I can tell you some years ago, I make something. Mom called it fryot salad, spring salad. So it's loose leaf lettuce, a little bit of onion, a little bit of chopped celery, and a sour cream dressing. Very, very simple, very basic, you know. And I put it on the table to serve it, and an older gentleman took some. He took a bite of it, and he burst into tears. And I said, "Are you all right?" And he wipes his tears away, and he goes, "Oh, it tastes just like my Grammy Snyder's." And I've never had food like evoke such a reaction that way. And I find that, you know, time and time again, and it seems the recipes and the way I learned to cook, and especially using the wood stove, really evokes that in people.
Yeah, I mean, flavor and smell memories are just so powerful, and the
Absolutely.
fact that you can create something that can transport somebody back to their 70 years to their childhood, and that they're sitting in their grandmother's kitchen again is just that is power. That is a true power and a gift. So, Rachel's right. Kissing wears out. Cooking don't. That's the best we say.
Rachel, I'll give you an amen to that.
Adam says real quick, oh, you haven't mentioned beverage pairings. What he's going along the hard line here. Boilo, Bloody Mary's, beer, Jaeger. Terry,
My.
what is a typical drink found on the table at your Thanksgiving?
Water.
Okay, yeah. And then coffee with dessert.
Yeah. And as you know, as a good Moravian, I mean, coffee's kind of in our blood. It's part of the love feast service. It's I've been drinking coffee since I was, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old. So it didn't stunt my growth any.
There you go. Adam, to answer your question, for the Maidenford family, we will have a variety of opportunities for beverages, alcohol included, beer, wine. The Boilo, and I'll have to mention that again on our December episode. Boilo is a oh, is an
Yeah, that's
alcoholic
more of a
drink.
coal
It,
region.
it is, but there were Pennsylvania Dutch in that part of Schuylkill County that also made it,
Oh,
and
really?
oh
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
and it's served
Well, I'll
warm.
hold my tongue then.
It's
Uh,
served warm, and I'm used
yeah,
to drinking that around Christmas time, but that doesn't mean you have to, right? And Bloody Marys usually won't find their way on the Maidenford table, but I'm sure there are people out there that maybe do. But then we
maybe.
always close with coffee as well. Adam says, "Yeah, it'll defrost your windshield." Yeah, Boilo will defrost your windshield if you.
Oh,
That's great.
and clean your pipes out too.
Probably. Terry, we've kind of come to the end of your part of this of the show tonight. Thank you so much for coming on. We kind of talked about a lot of things. We touched on Moravian faith a little bit. We of course talked about your wood burning stove and how you cook on it, and then we came to a conclusion here with what do our Thanksgiving tables look like. I want to just wish that that you and your family and your friends all have a very blessed Thanksgiving, Terry. I know that they're going to eat well, that's for sure. And
Yeah,
thank you for coming on the show tonight, sharing your story. I'm going to have you back on as a guest for sure, because we got tons of other stuff we can talk about that we didn't even talk about tonight that I'd love to have
sure.
you back on in the future at some time. But
Anytime,
until
Doug.
then, I
Anytime.
appreciate that, Terry. Until we speak again, have a very happy Thanksgiving, Terry, to you and your family. And I look
Yep,
forward to speaking to you in the near future again.
yep. Ich wünsche dich frohe Bedankstag.
Groß Dank. Dir auch, lieber Freund. Dir auch, lieber Freund. Mach's gut, Terry.
Ich probiere du auch.
Does it get any better than that? Being able to sit down with an old friend and talk about something that we love, food, and not just food, good food, Pennsylvania Dutch food. It doesn't make much better than that. Every episode, as everybody knows, I try to provide something in Pennsylvania Dutch for everybody language-wise. Usually it's a poem, but this month I thought, no, let's do something a little different. Since we are coming up on Thanksgiving next week, and I know not everyone is religious, and that's perfectly fine. But I want to share a Pennsylvania Dutch table prayer with everybody. And maybe if you are Pennsylvania Dutch, maybe you want to try and use this on Thursday before your meal. But I have the Pennsylvania Dutch on one side and I have the English on the other. I'm going to read the Pennsylvania Dutch. You can follow along with the English, or if you speak Pennsylvania Dutch, you can follow along with the English. But here's a prayer that you could use next Thursday or anytime. It doesn't have to be for Thanksgiving, but here's one that you could use before a meal. Lieber Gott, mir kommet Zusammenheit Dank zu geben. Wir sind dankbar für alles, was du zu uns gegeben hast. Segne es Essen, die Hände, die es gemacht haben, und all die Leute, die mit uns heute feiern. Sei mit all die Leute, die heute kein warmes Essen haben, oder mit die Leute, die allein sind. Mit tiefsinniger Herzen bete mir zu dir. Amen. So there's a prayer for you, thinking about, be thankful next week, no matter what you have. That's what Thanksgiving's all about. I love Thanksgiving. I love Thanksgiving probably more than, to a certain extent, maybe even more than Christmas. There's just something about Thanksgiving, the idea of coming together for a meal. That's the purpose we're coming together, to share a meal with everybody and to take time to truly say and think about what we are thankful for in this life. And look, the last 2 years have been pretty rough. I think we can all agree with that. With COVID and the pandemic and problems in our world, Thursday, find some quiet time to think about what you're thankful for, right? One last thing, I always provide some kind of song for everybody for the show, and today is no different. I have to give a shout out to Carol Cantner, who's watching tonight. I asked her; she's the librarian of the Tulpahawk Sanger Corps, a Pennsylvania Dutch language choir, and I said, "Hey, I'm looking for lyrics to a popular hymn in Pennsylvania Dutch. It's also a German hymn. It's also an English hymn. Now, thank we all our God." And she says, "I do have that. In fact, I also have a version that is geared towards Thanksgiving." And I said, "What? Send me that, please." And she did. And here it is. This is to the tune of Now Thank We All Our God. Maybe you know that if you're Christian, but it is specific for Es Betdaglied. We have two terms for, well, we probably have more than two. For Thanksgiving in Pennsylvania Dutch, we say either there's Danksfescht, literally thanks festival, but we also, some people use the word Betdag, day of prayer. So we have these different terms out there, and I've heard other ones too. Those are the ones that I think I've heard the most. But here is a great song to this tune of Now Thank We All Our God, but it is talking about now thank we all our God. We come together at our table, our Thanksgiving table, and it's wonderfully loaded with foods. We come with happy voices and hearts to say our thanks to you. It talks about, you send us sunshine, you send us rain for the earth. We are never working alone because you're always there with us throughout the year. In our time of need, you're always with us as well. I mean, that's a real quick, rough translation of the song. But I want to sing it for you. Got my trusty ukulele here. And if you know the melody, which I know a lot of you do, you can sing along with me. Let's sing Es Betdaglied or Na Dank mir alle Gott. Nun danke alle Gott, da schenkt uns all sei Gnade, weil unser Betagtisch ist wunderbar gelade mit fröhlicher Stimme und Herz. I messed that up, sorry guys. Zu ihm in Dankbarkeit. Nun danke alle Gott von all die deutsche Leid. Schickt uns Sonnenschein, grießt die Erd mit Rehre, man schafft jo nie net leh. Gott helft in viele Wehe, im Frühjahr ist die Sod. Im Spätjahr kommt die Ern, helft in jeder Not. Mir danke ihn ganz gern. Last verse, everybody, come on. So danke alle Gott, vergess nie net zu beten. Mir stehen ihm im Schuld. Da druften mir uns Freude, was Obst, Frucht und Gemüse, verlustige Zeit und des bei uns so süß, Gott segende Freiheit. Sorry about that ukulele part. My fingers didn't want to do what they needed to do. Sometimes they just don't want to work. It was a long day in the classroom today. But there's a great song for everybody to kind of put you maybe in the spirit, so to speak. Rachel says, gross dung for all you do, Bruder. Bless your giving heart. Thank you. Well, thank you, Rachel. You do a lot for all of us, too. It's been a great show, everybody. I've given you a lot of opportunities of things to check out next, in the coming days. We got Chris Kindle markets to check out. Of course, your Thanksgiving festivals. And then we're walking into Christmas here before you know it. And then before you know it, get your pork and sauerkraut ready because New Year's is coming, everybody. And we'll talk about that, of course, on future episodes. Everyone, it's been a wonderful joy to be with you and spend this last hour with all of you as I do every month. I can share with you right now that, and I'll put my stream back on so you can see, so that you can add this to your things to do. You can go buy me a coffee to support what we're doing here. If you really like what we're doing, you don't have to, but if you feel free, it's an opportunity for you to give a small monetary donation. All money raised goes towards the upkeep of the channel. Things like new camera lenses and maybe new ukulele lessons for my fingers so that they know what they're doing next time. I don't know better. So Gates. And mark your calendars because I already know December 15th will be our next episode of PA Dutch Live. And it's going to be special. Now, look, people, you get to be part of the December episode. I'm not getting a special guest on. It's December. We're going to be thinking about Christmas, and I want to talk about Pennsylvania Dutch Christmas things. The Belschnickel will probably be brought up. Maybe we'll talk about some vocabulary associated, but I want to have it as a live viewer call-in, where if you're watching, you can join the stream, just like Terry did tonight. I can bring you on for a couple minutes, and we can talk about what are your traditional Pennsylvania Dutch Christmas memories, or what does your family do at Christmas time. For those of you staying up across the ocean to stay up real late, you can join the stream too. Like Norman, you're usually with us every week. I expect you to be there in December, and I'm going to pull you on the stream if you want to come on. I'm not going to bully anybody onto it, but the opportunity will be there next month for you to join the show and share with the audience what you guys are doing. Look at that. Chris is already saying, wow, he's going to join us next week, and I bet Rachel will too because she says, yay! I hope so. Dr. Lingua, thanks for staying up tonight. I know you're across the ocean joining us. Joyce throwing some Pennsylvania Dutch at us. Good gadoo, Doug. Well, gross dung, Joyce. Gross dung. Everybody, we'll be back with you before you know it on the 15th of December. But between now and then, I wish all of you and your families and whoever you will be celebrating with next Thursday a very blessed, happy Thanksgiving. Find time to think about what you are thankful for. I hope you have tables full of food and you are surrounded by people that you love and that people you can share that day with. Till next month, everybody, stay upright, stay safe, and as we say in Pennsylvania Dutch, Gott mag's gut, lieber Freund.
Ich kann deutsche Worte singen, hoff so kannst du. Wähle dann mit Anna singen, sing ich und du. Ich bin froh und ich bin herrlich, wie bist dann du? Ich geh recklen auf die Karte, ich hoff so durch du. Oh, wir singen, sing ich und du. Oh, mir platsche dazu. Viel wie ein Hutschli im Feld, wie viel stand du? Gib dem Doktor gar kein Geld, was gibst dann du? Rumfungiere du ich nicht, hoff nicht durch du. Ich geh zeitlich noch im Bett, hoff so durch du. Oh, mir singen, sing ich und du. Oh, mir platsche